I was born in Hartford, Connecticut. I spent a lot of time in New Hampshire, spent a lot of time in Maine. Most of my family is still back there. I remember I worked at a bus as a busboy at a restaurant. I can remember coming home about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I remember seeing the lights on in the house, and my dad was waiting up for me. So I knew something weird was going on. I don't know what he was going through at the time, but he didn't show it. He explained somehow to the point that mom needed a little bit of a break. Not sure when she's coming back. She didn't come back for about 2 months. When she did come back, it was a super awkward situation. We were having a barbecue in the backyard. So this is 50 years ago, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. We didn't know she was coming back. And she walked in the backyard, and we were all just kind of like dumbfounded. We didn't know if we should hug her, throw something at her. We didn't know what to do. So the thing just kind of broke up. My mom and my dad left together. I ended up going over a friend of mine's house for the night. I didn't know what was going on. I came back the next day, went through the house, nobody was home, and I noticed that all my dad's stuff was gone. After my dad moved out, my mom's new boyfriend moved in, and I'm guessing at this a little bit, but I think within a week. So to see a different guy in a house that I grew up, and my dad's out there, I was just done. So I was 16 at that time, and there were things going on in the house that I could hear that he didn't like. So I jumped out my bedroom window, and I went to the restaurant where I worked as a busboy. Behind the restaurant where I worked, there was a house where a bunch of waiters lived in. It was a party house. So I went directly there. Most of those guys were late 20s, early 30s, so they were a lot older than I was. And I walked in there, and they were smoking weed, and they were drinking, and I just kind of had what do I have to lose at this point? So I went for it, and unfortunately, I loved it. It was just an instant, like, weight lifted off me, like everything's okay, everything's gonna be good. So because my first experience was awesome, it was joyful, I wanted to do it more. And then I wanted to do it more and more and more. And then with that, of course, the quantity of what you're doing increases. And then you're experiencing with other things besides alcohol and weed, which gets into LSD, cocaine, at that point, anything I could get my hands on. So about this time when I was 16 years old, I did get into a relationship with a girl named Carol. She was a very solid person, and at this time I was kind of in the wavering stage. I was drinking, doing drugs, but not to a point of getting into trouble or anything. She always kind of kept a lid on it for me, kind of kept me under control. She was probably an enabler at some point. So I kind of had that force of her. Like, I never went completely over the hill. I was just kind of always on the verge of getting in trouble, but I did hold a job. It was just a very repetitive thing, a nonstop thing. Drink heavily during the week and ridiculously heavy on the weekends. At that time, she wasn't an angel, but she wasn't, I don't believe that she had an issue like I did. She could have a few beers or something and walk away from it. I just couldn't do it. I always had to keep on going. So that relationship went on for 14 years. Then it came to a point where she wanted to get married, and she gave me an ultimatum. Either you quit drinking, quit your drugs, get rid of your motorcycle, or we're not getting married. And so I was 30 then. So I said, okay, not doing it, see ya. So that's when I basically, this is one of the things I regret. I basically left her at the altar. It was about a week before the wedding. It was all planned out. And I just packed up my stuff and said, I'm gone. I said, I'm not gonna quit. I'm not gonna give up my motorcycle. I'm not gonna give up my drugs. I'm not gonna do it. So at that point, I packed up my things and I took my motorcycle from Connecticut to California. I was scared to death. I was just second guessing myself. It's like, I quit a union job. I got out of a relationship after 14 years. People are calling me up and going, dude, did you lose your mind? Like, are you having a nervous breakdown? Like, what is going on with you? I was going as fast as I could to get as far away as I could, so I knew I couldn't turn back. So the trip all the way across country, once I kind of settled into it, I absolutely loved it. The big issue was when I got to where I was going, which was in Malibu, I had no money. I had no job. I had no friends. I was so scared. The trip was over. The journey was over. I had accomplished my feat at destination, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I was out of money. It was a very surreal awakening moment for me. So once I was in Malibu for about 3 or 4 weeks, I was living with a bunch of homeless people. We kind of took care of each other. I met a guy that brought me up to Lancaster, California, which is a Mojave Desert, if any of you guys have been there before. He made a deal with me. He told me to give me 2 weeks to stay at his house, a place to stay, but I had to work when I was there. The next day I went out and found a job doing drywall at a motel in Lancaster, California. After working on that job for about 2 weeks, I went into work one morning. I had a massive hangover. I was in a construction trailer, and a guy came in the door and asked me what was wrong. And I said, man, I was up all night. I didn't get home till 3:30. I'm so drunk. I'm so hungover. I can't work. And he offered me methamphetamines, at that time they called it crank. Being from the East Coast, I didn't even know what he was talking about. I said, what is it? He said, it's speed. I said, yeah, I'll take some of that. So he gave me a little bit of crank, and it instantly snapped me out of that hangover I was in. I went out and ended up having an unbelievably productive day. I couldn't believe how good it was. I couldn't believe that I could go to the bar till 2 o'clock every morning, get up, first thing in the morning I would do with methamphetamines. I could continue with my day. I was paying my bills. I was making tons of money. So it was actually, sadly at that point, it seemed like a miracle drug. I hadn't realized at that point that I was getting addicted to it. For the first 4 years, I was a functioning alcoholic and drug addict. Probably more like probably 6 years, I was still functioning. It was getting weirder. I was losing tons of weight. I got into this habit of wearing 2 pairs of everything, two pairs of pants, 2 pairs of shirts, because of the weight loss I had. And I was trying to hide it from people, which is a joke, because they see your face getting sucked in. I wasn't fooling anybody but myself. So I did know after about 6 years, like, I was in deep trouble. Now I had this massive meth addiction along with the alcohol. And now I was at the point of talking to God again. It's like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know anything about rehab centers. I didn't know anything about halfway house. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff at that time. So I was in a panic. I was afraid if I told anybody, I would lose my job. If I lost my job, I would lose my apartment. I would lose my car. So I was in a real catch-22, and I found myself in that same place again. Like, I couldn't imagine living without meth, and I couldn't imagine living with it. I knew it was going to take me out, but I couldn't stop. And I wasn't having fun anymore. It just had consumed my life, and that physical addiction, mental addiction to it. So it was just, again, a really rough place to be. I knew if I didn't stop, somehow it would stop in the shape of death, hospital, jail. I knew I was going down that road. I just didn't know what to do. So in 1992, when my whole life was completely out of control, full tilt meth addict, full tilt alcoholic, I'd met a girl, got married rather quickly. She was in the same boat I was. I met her in a bar. Our relationship became extremely toxic very fast. The insanity, which didn't seem like it could get any worse, went tenfold. It was one of the situations where the police were coming over our house twice a week. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming, a lot of smashing of furniture, neighbors hating us, people trying to get us kicked out. Ultimately, she ended up getting fired from her job because of the economy. I lost our job, my job, didn't have any money. So the eviction process was starting to happen. At this point, I remember clearly going into my bathroom one day and looking in the mirror. And for the last couple of years, I picked up, I'll call it an obsession, where I started picking at my body and pulling my hair out. So at one point, I pulled out the whole left side of my beard. I pulled out all the hair out of my arm, and I know that sounds kind of weird and kind of gross, and to this day, I don't really understand it. I do know it's a form of self-harm. But I remember looking in the mirror, I weighed 140 pounds. I had bruises all over my chest, all over my face. I learned pretty quickly to stop picking my face because people could see it. So I wore long sleeve shirts, but that was definitely a moment of clarity, looking and going, oh my God, I mean, I looked like a freak show, because I was a freak show. There was nothing stable about my life. I was verbally abusive to my wife. It was just, we were both two very sick individuals and had no business being married whatsoever. We got married because we were in addiction. It sounded like a good thing to do, and it was a stupid mistake. So that marriage didn't last that long. It was about 5 years, but it was 5 years of pure insanity. At this point, because we lost everything, we moved out to the middle of the Mojave Desert in that cabin. We got sober when we moved out there, and I had another moment of clarity being at the cabin, completely broken, It was a beautiful night. The stars were out, and I went up behind the cabin, and I got on my knees. I said, Lord, I know you're probably getting tired of this prayer, but I just don't know what to do. I had an opportunity to come up to Idaho and get a job as a drywaller. My buddy that I told you I met on that job, he moved to Coeur d'Alene. So I was still communicating with him, and he's like, hey, I can get you a job up here. And so I told her, she was a California native, I said, we can go to Idaho, I get a job right now, get out of the desert. So I had this crazy lie in my head that I'm not doing meth, but I could probably still drink. Well, that was a lie. So I did stay off methamphetamine for 10 years, but the next 14 years was basically a repetitive story. In AA, out of AA, 30 days sober, relapse, 60 days sober, relapse. At one point I had 2 years, relapse. Another point I had a year, relapse. I just couldn't stay sober. I went to a bar in Coeur d'Alene, and that I went to every single night, and there was a guy in there that kept talking about Jim Putman, and he kept inviting me to go to Real Life Ministries. And I'm like, yeah, I'm starting to think, yeah, maybe this is what I need, man. Maybe I need to start paying more attention to God. I was fighting it in my head now. So in 2005, after a night of drinking and promising my friend that I'd come to Real Life for a year, I got home at 4:30 one morning, and I just decided that I'm gonna go to Real Life today and see this Jim Putman guy. And I took a shower, and I came to the first service, and I was drunk, and I was hungover, and I know, even though I took a shower, that people could probably smell alcohol on me. But anyway, I came in. When I first came in, it was overwhelming. I had not been in a church at this point for 38 years for any reason whatsoever. A wedding, nothing. I was not stepped foot in church for anything. It was a little overwhelming, but people coming up to me. I can remember Keith Strasburger coming up to me and talking to me, and wow, he was an amazing guy. Jim Putman, he started preaching about how he was struggling with addiction, and I just felt this power come over me of love and acceptance that was something that I had never, ever felt before. And I actually talked to Jim Putman after the service and told him, I said, man, I've never been here before, and I thought you were talking to me when you were up there. He said, that was God talking to you through me. And I said, like, wow, I just walked out of here in tears. I absolutely loved it. The problem is, I still wasn't ready to quit drinking. So I was coming to Real Life, still drinking at night, coming to Real Life, stopping, coming, not coming, over and over again, still fighting the whole addiction thing. I went to Celebrate Recovery, but I was doing that halfway too. I'd stay for the message, I'd stay for the meal, and I'd leave before they got into any kind of groups. So I played that game for 4 years. It was just a very lonely time in my life, and again, a very scary time in my life. I just didn't know what to do. I got up one morning in March of 2009, and the night before I came home absolutely smashed, falling down the stairs, and I dropped, I think, a spaghetti jar, and I don't remember exactly the details of it, but I remember going out to my bedroom and said, okay, God, here I am again. At that point, I stopped going to recovery again. I was going to Real Life, kinda. And I said, if you're there again, man, could you just give me the courage, the drive. This was on a Monday, to go back to recovery tomorrow, which would be a Tuesday. I said, I don't believe in suicide, but that's where I'm at. And if you could take me out in another form, like a heart attack, I'm good. I don't want to live anymore. I'm just done. I just can't do it. And I got up the next morning, and I was still alive, which was Tuesday. And I went to Celebrate Recovery that night, and for the first time in my whole life, I stayed for the whole meeting, and I reached out to other people. People reached out to me, and that was start of my sober journey, March 7th, 2009, which is my sobriety day, which is that day.